To Defenders and Lab Coats. I am your podcast host, Reanna Schultz. And today we have April. Hi, April. Welcome to the lab.
Hi, Reanna. Hi, lab.
Now, April, would you kind of mind talking about your journey and a little bit who you are?
Right. So even though I am in the cybersecurity realm, at the end of the day, I am still and will always be an educator.
Yes.
I'm a product of two retired educators from the K-12, the whole realm. And I myself have created curriculum for adults on the life skills side. I've trained young adults on life skills. My path has led me through retail management. And then a short stint in education where I was a ELL para, and I was able to travel around different schools and work with K through 6 students. Then I found myself in higher ed. So I was actually a professor of cybersecurity, and we have a little story about that. We can round back to that. And now I find myself still on the plight of cybersecurity in the corporate realm as a global cybersecurity awareness manager.
Yes, and I will say, especially, we've known each other for 3, almost 4 years now. It feels
Yes.
like, and
Yes.
I always hear your name come up. I was like, I know her. She's so cool.
And
like,
even
I'm a girl when I hear your name.
Hey, right? And I mean, we've even sat on panels.
Oh, yes.
And
Always
then
a
the
good time.
very, if not only, but few women in the room.
Yep.
So we've had some, I'm a high five you, girl. We've
High
had
five.
some great moments and more to
Yeah.
come, including the podcast today.
Absolutely. I always like hearing success journeys, not just like everyone in general, but it's always cool when you hear another woman in STEM because you're like, I can relate. I can absolutely
Yeah.
relate to some of your roadblocks, and it's really cool. It's very empowering and insightful, and it gives people different perspectives, as to how did they get there. So,
Absolutely. I am loud and proud about my path not being traditional. So,
yes,
yeah.
and it's so cool as well. Now, April, I know we kind of talked about this a bit, and you have mentioned to me that you're a very proud parent as well.
Heck yeah. So, and it's funny that, when I talk about my STEM career, I tell people I was forced to go into cybersecurity, and I say that tongue in cheek, but it was at a stage in my life where, I was unemployed. And because of that, I was able to qualify for the retraining, retooling programs. And there were two options at the time. And the two buzzwords were welding,
Yep.
and there's nothing against it. It's not for me, right? And the other free program that was available was cybersecurity. And so the mother in me was like, if I'm going to go through this and learn whatever this cyber thing is, because,
Yep.
when I jumped in, it was like, what is this cyber thing, right? It's for dudes. And, what am I, a Black female trying to jump into this arena?
Yep.
But in addition to that, with my other 3 children who were, middle and elementary school, maybe middle and elementary school at that time, I thought I'm going to take them along on this journey with me as well. Because there's something to this cyber thing, right? And this was 10 or so years ago. And so over the years, they've dibbled and dabbled right into it. So I do have 2 daughters and a son. And so my daughters have been interested in engineering, and then they kind of stopped. And my son has kind of been in aviation, then he kind of stopped. And, And the path, as I've mentioned already,
Yep.
is nonlinear. You
Oh,
create your own path.
you
And a
absolutely
lot of
do.
times I tell people chart your own journey.
Yes.
So as the years have passed, so my eldest, my older two are daughters. So my oldest is in IT and cybersecurity,
Yes.
thriving in that and doing her own thing at a local startup. My middle daughter, my middle child, second daughter, is finishing her college career in water sanitation. So kind of in the
Yes.
engineering.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of math.
Yes. And my son is bringing up the rear in avionics, aviation. He loves to fly. He has been a competitive drone pilot. So they're all just making it work for them. I encouraged them when they
Yes.
were in middle school. Chart your own journey, and they have done that. So, yes, I'm a proud mom of three STEM technologists
Yes.
that will go and, change the world.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm proud for you. I'm proud for your
Yes.
kids. They're not even my kids.
Right.
That's
We had
awesome.
the opportunity to kind of speak on being a STEM family
Yes.
at the InfoSec Summit in Colorado, in Ohio, rather.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
of course, that was yet another proud moment that I had because of
Yeah.
many families can't do that. And especially families of daughters and sons and of
Yes.
color. And I mean, so we loved it. We were well received for that particular panel discussion. And I look forward to doing more.
Oh my gosh. That is so congratulations, by the way. That is
It was
awesome.
exciting. My son was super nervous. He's like, I don't want to ever do that
Oh,
again. But I tell them you have a story to tell,
yes.
especially being young themselves.
And you have no idea, like, the impact that you have on other people from your journey, and it's crazy because I hear about other people's journey, whether it's, like, the military background or, "Hey, I was a music tech or, theater, and I ended up in cyber," and I was just like, "I went through
Right.
college." And, but, like, hearing like, my journey inspired people, and I mean, your journey has absolutely inspired me, and I think that's, like, one of the things that your kids probably have learned is I mean, you're saying it, right? Document your journey, right? Because
Right.
someone's gonna come up to you one day, regardless if you wanna admit it or not, someone's gonna come up to you and be like, "How did you get here? Where did you start?" And it's just like,
Right.
"Ugh."
Right. Let me tell you, right? And
Yes.
I knew we were going to circle around back to this, but
Oh,
it's kind
yes.
of perfect to pivot. And so many people, as you just mentioned, would ask me, and how do you do it? And when do you do
Yes.
it? And what's the secret sauce? And I'm like, each experience is different.
Yeah.
But because I kept getting so many interests and invitations to speak, I thought, okay, let me package this, right? It's because
Yes.
sometimes I tell the same story, but each story is different. And so I
Yeah.
wrote a book about it, right?
Oh,
So I'm
yes.
like, okay, let me get this content out so it can help more than those that are just locally or in my neighborhood or that can hear me speak locally. So,
Yeah.
the book is the top 5 rules of engagement
Yes.
for parents raising a girl in STEM.
Oh, I love it.
And I sat down and thought about, okay, what are 5 key core elements, right? And I'm
Yes.
not going to go through it. People can buy my book on Amazon, but shameless plug. But it further inspired me to keep going,
Yeah.
right? And it's been a journey worth telling, and we've loved it along the way.
Oh, I absolutely enjoy it. I now we're probably gonna get this question or I might get a message later down is were you afraid at all to publish your book? I know a lot of people when they start they're like I have no idea where to begin. Should I go with an
Mm,
editor? Should I just, put it on Amazon and hope that my English and grammar is perfect, and you don't
right.
want to submit it through AI tools because then AI will own the book and
Right. The funny journey behind that
yeah,
was that particular book was my third
really.
book that I had self-published. And the backdrop behind that is the job that I was talking about. A part of it was a severance package.
Wow.
And so I thought, now I have all this money. Well, and the time. And I thought, this is probably the best time as ever to write a book.
Yes.
And so I did it. I self-published, so I had my own pace. Um, I had a pretty decent publisher company at the time, because at that time that
Yeah.
was just the beginning of write it, and then the publishing company will take it and do all the rest of the stuff and
Right.
send it back to you, and then we'll publish it for you. So the process that I took, the self-publishing process, was pretty simple. You
Yeah.
just have to you had to really be structured because it was on
Yeah.
your time. But the moons and the stars were aligned, and I jumped at that opportunity. I had the money, had the time,
Might as
so I
well.
devoted myself to that.
Yep. Now, one thing that, like, you absolutely inspire me with is that you set aside that fear and you just go for it. And it's so inspiring because I'm like, "Holy cow, April's okay if she fails because she has the drive to just pick herself back up and talk about that."
Right.
You're like,
But
"I'm
you
not
know,
trying to brag, I'm being humble."
but you know what? It's
Yes.
almost like this industry fuels it though.
Yes.
We are encouraged to fall forward and fall and and do
Yeah.
it fast.
Yeah.
And a part of being an engineer or in cybersecurity at the very foundation is tinkering and breaking things. Now we want to tinker and break them to make them better, not just to be
Right.
doing that, which has kind of brought us to this weird dynamic that we're in now. Is like, oh my gosh, ethics and integrity, where has it gone?
Mhm.
But if we keep putting that human element
Yeah.
within that factor, I think
Yeah.
it'll be better. We'll help change it. We'll help change the ecosystem,
Yeah.
and make it better.
Yes. And now I'm kinda gonna circle back a little bit about your family, and I talked about some of it, how you inspire me. How do you keep inspiring your kids, right? I'm sure your oldest now being in corporate, whether it's a startup or not, I'm sure she comes to you asking for advice all the time. But how did you continue that inspiration and fueling their drive to just, write their journey, write their story?
Hmm. Well, I encourage them that if they've gone this far,
Yeah,
right, and I mean, being in any STEM field, there's a great unknown,
right.
right? And if you embrace that unknown, oh my gosh, that just further enhances and heightens the awareness for jumping into that journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
I think,
competitive drone flying.
right. And I mean, I think I always, I have always encouraged my children that, STEM is a new frontier.
Yes.
And so as long as I even encourage parents is like, if your kid doesn't know where just yet,
Right.
it's okay. They will fall somewhere in
Right.
STEM that they love.
Yeah.
I know it's
Absolutely.
hard for parents to do that. And I had to even do it, kind of step away, back up, step away.
You're like, "I just wanna put them in a nice little bubble, like, it's okay."
Right, right.
You love
But
them.
at the end of the day, like I said, all three of them landed and are comfortable within their skin
Yes.
in the particular areas where they landed. So mommy's happy.
I am too for you,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
Now,
And it's exciting.
yes, and what some other advice have you given parents? There's always the opportunity side. I'm sure there has been some very, I would say, frustrated, maybe burnt out parents. It
Yeah.
just feels, how do you consult them with stuff like this?
When I think back about some of the more challenging areas or times when trying to steer them while I was even learning, right? Because remember, I
Right,
was along this journey going to school as well, is
right.
sometimes you do have to just step back and let them figure it out.
Yeah.
During the time that my oldest daughter was trying to decide what area of STEM she wanted to be in, there were lots of high school programs and a lot more like how we have today. You leave half day of school, your junior,
Yep.
senior year, and you go to whatever. And it almost was like there were so many opportunities that she couldn't decide.
Yeah.
At that time, too, though, still a lot of the tech courses were heavily male students.
Yeah.
And so that at that time was a huge barrier for her,
Mhm.
right? I remember I took my youngest daughter to a robotics camp at a local college, a couple of hours away.
Right.
And I'm excited because I'm like, you're going to go, you're excited. This is what you do.
Yep.
We get there, and she's middle school.
Right.
She's the only female in the class.
Oh, man.
All the instructors are male.
Yep.
And so I will never forget this moment. I'll make it short. I'll never forget this moment. So
Yes.
I turn to walk away because, anytime I take my kids to a camp or
Mhm.
something, I hype them up before we get out the car, right? I'm
Yeah.
hyping them up as we're walking down the sidewalk. So she's already like, yeah. And I turn, and the most people that were fearful of that whole experience were other mothers.
Yeah.
And this one mother walked up to me and she was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I'm like looking around. I'm like,
You're like, "Am I on camera?"
I'm good. And she's like, do you realize your daughter's the only girl? And I hadn't, right? Because
Yep.
I've had a little of an experience. But
Yep.
I mean, I
You're like, "I'm so
baptized
numb to
them.
this."
I baptized them by whatever the
Yep.
phrase is. I dunked them right in there. And after that it was a weekend robotics course on a
Yeah.
college campus. The male instructors were like, ma'am, your daughter is awesome.
Yeah. You're like, "I know."
Right. And like, yes, I know. But before that parent had walked up to me, I was like, okay, bye, honey. And she was like, bye. So
Yeah.
I enjoy empowering parents to
Yeah.
empower their children, daughter, son, what have you. I love that. That is kind of like my special niche because I had to grow that thick skin for
Mhm.
my children, through my
Yep.
children, and for myself. And I know if they can get over that hump, because
Yes.
my daughter was like, I'm good. I'm like, okay. Middle school, right?
Oh, middle school,
But
so such a tenseful time for
I know. But all three of them are the better for it. I push
Yeah.
them sometimes to my own detriment, but it's a push and love, and they understand that. And it's a
Yes.
push and pull too, at times too. But as I mentioned, over the years, all three of them have graduated from high school and moved on. And so now they see the value. Now, back then they didn't, but now they see the value and why mom was so hard, or the
Yeah.
vision
Yeah.
that I've always had.
I remember coming home to my mom, I was like, "Johnny's mom lets him wear pajamas to school." My mom's like, "You're not wearing pajamas to school."
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like,
But now
"Why?"
it's
Of
a
course, now as
thing.
an
It's a
adult.
yeah, yeah.
Now, one thing that I'm curious about, did your kids have a lot of STEM clubs or anything like that with, like, middle school or high school?
Um, I can say that programs have gotten better.
Yes.
And there are curriculums that can be built within schools or particular
Yeah.
classes, or curriculums can be created in small pods, and
Yeah.
but one thing that I've always enjoyed, and you have been a instrumental part of that, when I was a professor, even
Mhm.
bringing in real time, real life
Yeah.
guest speakers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you were one of the pivotal ones that I brought into a number of my cybersecurity classes when I taught. I mean, and I told you, I pulled you to the side because I think there were 2 to 3 female
Yes.
technologists, and I'm like, look, the point of me bringing you is that I want them to see a female that's rocking it in
Yeah.
cybersecurity. So even though you thank me, I thank you for helping me bring that point. Because I know once they leave my classroom and graduate, there
Yeah.
may be years before they
Yeah.
work with and can fully appreciate a female peer within
Yeah.
cybersecurity. So I was, as a professor, I was very intentional,
Oh,
and even
yes.
as a parent, very intentional, so that they knew and they were equipped,
Yeah.
right? To when that challenge happened, they were able to deal with it. And that's what I go through in my book and just in
Mhm.
my daily teaching and consulting with parents,
Yeah,
because it's
and
critical moments.
Yeah, and I don't know if you ever knew this. I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but I still have students from those classes reach out to me that were like,
Wow.
"You were such an inspiration. I did XYZ." So, you should definitely give a huge pat on your back for
Wow.
investing in your students.
Yes.
It's always cool seeing the students and, that you go to these speaking events or whatever and what they're doing now, and
Right.
what's even more cool, and I know you're a very investment return person. It's also so cool seeing some of these students be very engaged in the community and just kinda giving back, right? And so it's like a full
Exactly.
circle. And,
I
so
love it.
anyways, I don't know if I ever shared that with you, so
No, I
yeah.
didn't know. Oh, that makes me feel so good.
Yes. Yes. Now,
Wow.
I thought it was so cool how, like, you and I connected, right? Especially, I worked at a startup and we would bring in a lot of educators and stuff from the community, and that's how we got connected.
Right.
And if you think about from that to, like, you invited me in your class and then all of these panels that we're in, it's just wild to think about how one small connection that you make with someone in this community and the stepping stones it can lay, and then also the impact of everyone around you that's going to these events and stuff
Right.
like that. So, anyways, I just thought it was so cool, you know?
It is. It is, and to be able to share it with you on your new podcast is
Oh,
even
yes.
more better because
Yes.
that brings that exponential awareness, right?
Yeah.
That it's still not male dominated. It's it's still we're making strides, but
Yes.
that we are here
Yes.
and we have a voice and we're making a change within this industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now one question for you, April, especially with your educator background and from you
Mm,
teaching, what's some advice that maybe you can give to middle school or high school teachers who might not have the funding in their district, but they want to
mhm.
bring on STEM? What are some areas that you might recommend that could be resourceful for them?
Wow. I tell you, look at the companies
Mhm.
that every time there's something STEM centric
Yeah.
or woman centric,
Yeah.
their names are there.
Yep.
They're the sponsors, they're the speakers, they have
Yep.
a booth. These are the no brainer people and companies that want to invest. So
Absolutely.
they're there. Help them learn ways to leverage their investment. So that's one start. So I would always tell people it's not hard to find the ones that will say yes.
Yeah.
Most of the time, their company name is in your face or they're already there, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't think, including you, that
Mhm.
there's never been a time when I asked anyone in the industry to come talk, to volunteer, to help
Yep.
me help the next generation. I don't think there's ever been a time when a
No.
professional has said no.
No. And
So simply
yeah.
ask.
Absolutely, and I think it's especially, I know a lot of speakers, and I take this as my motto, and I'm sure you do too. If it's an education institution, I don't charge for my speaking fees,
Yeah,
right? Because that you're literally there to invest into the next generation. You wanna make sure they're set up for success, so it's
right.
definitely something just go ask, you know?
So get out of that fear, do the ask.
Do that.
And I'm telling you, I can't think. And I mean, if it ever happened, it was so few and far in between. Anytime I've asked for, and even to, like you said, to be on a panel, even
Yeah.
years ago, I hosted one at a church event,
Mhm.
and I had big name company people's like, I'm there.
Yeah,
Didn't even stutter.
absolutely. Yeah,
And it was on, I think it was on a Sunday, right? And they're like, I'm
right.
there. They get it. And you know what? Those that don't get it or that are hassle, they're not the ones that should be in that kid's life or in that
No.
school.
Yep.
The
Yep,
ones that say
absolutely.
yes, they get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's really not hard. It's strategic,
Yeah.
right? But it really isn't hard. Those that want to help will make it clear that they want to help and invest.
Yes. Now, one question also, April, with you, being an educator background and having your own kids, do you practice cybersecurity safe practices with your kids when they were growing up? Like social media, posting photos, that kind of stuff?
Contrary to popular belief, I was not a stickler. I probably should have been,
There's
but
nothing
I
wrong with
was not.
that.
I wasn't the social media or social engineering police, because
Yeah.
remember, while they were growing up, I was still learning.
Oh, right, right.
Right. So
Yeah.
I was still trying to be, put on my second skin and understand what this
Yeah.
cyber thing deal was. So contrary, I know people always are like, really? Yes, I wasn't a social engineer police or police mom when I was, when the kids were younger. You know, um, there's always been an element of, be aware,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, but I really wasn't that much of a stickler.
Yeah.
They kind of just got it and understood the importance and the impact.
Right. Yeah. It
But
follows you. It
but
absolutely follows
also,
you.
this was, when I started getting into it and studying, this was 10, 12 years ago, so it was totally different then.
Yes.
But I was not a stickler. And I'm still not really a stickler. You know what, probably more so with my mother,
Yeah.
that generation, because I tell her, don't send me anything. I'm not clicking on a picture or a link. I was like, no.
Oh my gosh.
That's where
It's
I draw
like
the line with her, because she doesn't understand. She does not. And I understand in her innocence, but I'm like, I'm not opening that picture.
mm-mm.
I'm not clicking on it.
You're like, I know better.
Right.
I
Right.
I think my favorite thing, my dad. Oh, bless my dad. I think it's the definition of ignorance is bliss, you know?
Yeah.
And he's just like, "Well, until it happens, it happens." And then you get a phone call and he's like, "Hey, I bought $1,000 in gift cards." And I'm like, "Doug."
Right. Right.
I'm like, "They tell you you're gonna be telling stories of your parents for generations, and I'm so glad I have this story to tell my kids or my kids' kids and their kids' kids." And
Right.
I'm like, "I'll make sure to save a page in my book about my parents just for this moment," you know?
Right. Right. In honor of, yeah.
Thank you, Doug. Now, April, I definitely want to be cautious of your time as
Yes.
well. And I always like to give a little bit of a few minutes towards the end of the show for any final advice for our defenders and lab coats that you would like to leave with them.
Wow. My message for the past few years has been, we've got to look at this from a global perspective.
Yes.
Yes, there are things that happen locally that locally impact us. But I mean, when we think of things like the ticket,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
master scare or
Oh,
CrowdStrike,
yeah.
where we all froze.
Oh,
The
yeah.
world almost literally froze. But when we peel back the layers and look at everything, what is the one common denominator? The human factor.
Absolutely.
So if me, you, our
Hmm.
parents, our kids, each generation, right,
Right.
does what they need to do, and I'm talking basic level, passwords, paying
Yeah.
attention, closing things out, being aware of who's behind you, possibly of shoulder surfing, simple things like that. Anytime I
Yeah.
talk to someone, I keep it simple. I
Yep.
stick to the basics, because you'll lose it if you get too high level.
Oh, yes.
I always start and keep it at the basic level.
Yes.
And then we go from there. So cybersecurity is not hard, it's not too confusing. Keep it simple,
Yep.
do the basics, and we'll get through whatever else is the next thing to happen, or the scare, or the breach. We'll be
Yes.
fine, right?
Right.
But do the basics.
Yes.
Consistently do the basics. That's my final message.
Oh, I love it. That's such great advice. And I know I said maybe one last question, but this is my last question of the questions. April, if people would like to connect with you or reach out to you or even look into your book, what are some platforms or areas of contact that they can reach out to you?
Right. And I need to update my website, but
Oh,
oh my gosh, as you can see on the screen, TheSTEMBroker.com is my website, where you can find everything about me, order a book, or two or three, or one of my other copies, and contact me. But I do need to update my information, so sorry up front. but that is where they can reach me. And of course, the normal social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook under the STEM broker.
Awesome. Well, April, thank you so much for joining us in the lab today. It has been a very great, I would say, learning session with you. And I definitely am feeling very inspired. So I'm going to have a fantastic rest of the day. And so
Right.
I absolutely know our listeners are going to feel passionate and inspired as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the ask, Rihanna. I always enjoy meeting with you, speaking with you, or being on the panel with you. We always have
Absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely. Next time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, April.
All
See you
right.
soon.
Bye.